Welcome to the Daily Aztec Debrief with your host for episode 16, Josh Scott.
I'm Josh Scott, and today we're going to be hanging out with Justin Pearson. You've been a musician, record producer, and kind of just a force in punk rock and underground music for over 30 years now. You're the host also of the Cult and Culture podcast. Is there anything that I've missed that you do, Justin?
Well, thank you. I think there's probably something. I mean, I've done like all kinds of weird stuff. I'm an author, an actor. I just hustle and fake it till I make it, I guess. Yeah.
When I was looking you up, I tried to find every band that you've been a part of. I think I came up with 15.
That might be right. There's a bunch. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite one?
That's a good question, and I get asked that every now and then. I think each thing has a different amount of different set of stuff attached to it. I'm most known for The Locust because I think it had like the longer span of time, and also I think that maybe the other Locusts are like my brothers, and so that it held like a special place. But all the like more recent projects do fit in line with that as well. I think that maybe like the longer a thing spans, the more depth that it has. So yeah, I don't have a favorite because they're all different, and I like different things musically speaking, and so on and so forth. I also have different, like sometimes I play bass, sometimes I sing, sometimes I play bass and sing. So it just depends on because sometimes I want to not play bass anymore, or sometimes I don't want to sing anymore. So yeah,
I get it.
Yeah,
I think All Leather was the one that really stood out to me the most.
Yeah.
Especially the music videos that I found on YouTube and whatnot. So, talking about music in general, I noticed that online there's a lot of descriptive terms and kind of subcategories that your music ends up in. Do you consider yourself punk rock? Are you a branch of that? You know, do you mind getting into a little bit just about how you would explain your music to somebody who's never heard it before?
This is also a great question. I think that the industry standards of what genres is fine for mainstream, but I think that when you're in the middle of something or in the thick of something, there are nuances and the minutia of things are different. Where like, so I'll go back. There's two things. One, I'll go back and say that like I think there's a difference between punk and punk rock. Punk rock is like, spiky hair and a snotty attitude or whatever, and like punk. And with the larger term of punk ethics can be anything. It could be someone who's I don't know. There's like a protest happening outside this building right now. Like that's a punk move. I think there's like I have friends that are like local organic farmers. I think that's punk. People that run like animal shelters, that's punk. So I think that there's a differentiation between the two terms. And so like when I'm out somewhere and someone's like, "Oh, you play music? What kind of music do you play?" And if I say punk, they're gonna default to the wrong thing. So I just say annoying, and then that kind of like leads them either to stop talking to me, or it opens like a bigger platform of like what art is. And that I think that's an important thing too, because again, like you could there's cumbia bands, there's 3-piece jazz bands, there's things that I think that are like would not be considered punk by music industry standards, but like by my standards I feel like they would be. So yeah, I say annoying, and I say yes, I'm punk. My DNA, my ethos is punk, but like punk rock, it just has a nasty taste in my mouth. Leaves a nasty taste in my mouth.
I get it.
Yeah.
Kind of spinning deeper into that, because you also are the founder of 31G Records. Can you give us a little bit of history of like how did you go from being an artist and a musician to also then being in production, and where that necessity kind of came from, or you were just exploring other avenues for where you can take your creativity?
Yeah, okay, so I started playing music when I was 15. I'm 50 now. So, and then when I turned 19, I had already released a couple records on various labels, and I had put things into context of like what a good label is and then what like a bad label is. I had dealt with both. And so uh, the idea was presented to me that I should start my own record label. And one of my bandmates at the time for a band I was in called Swing Kids said, who was in another band called Unbroken, who was kind of like a legendary hardcore band in San Diego, said, you should put out Unbroken 7-inch and start a record label. So I did. And I did it like without any sort of foresight or understanding of what like the future was. I just did it like as a thing that was happening right then and right there. And I used resources like scamming Kinko's copies and stuff like that, and also I was going to community college at the time, and I would just I got like financial aid because of my the class bracket that I was in and stuff. So I used all that money to sort of start a record label, and then I have like fumbled through it for 31 years, and I wish I never started it. but at the same time, like I think that it helped. It helps now, even now, right now. Like if I want to put out music, it's definitely a thing. That's a tool, and there's an infrastructure there that works out really easily for me and a lot of my friends. And I think that I'm grateful that I've created a community through 31G that like does involve things that I'm not personally in, but I feel that I can get a connection with, or I can connect with, and then they help build a community of like artists and musicians. And it is a weird mix of bands. To me, it makes sense, but you know, there are bands that are like, there's, you know, like locally there's like Cattle Decapitation, which is like death metal, and then there's Sonido de la Frontera, which is cumbia, you know, and like most record labels wouldn't pair those two together,
right.
And I do. So yeah.
That was early 90s?
94 is when the label started. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have any idea when you were starting it just how long running that ecosystem was going to be? Like you said almost 31
years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, because also too back then there was no internet. So things were like, you know, you're putting out physical, tangible records and stuff. So the way, and there was no social media. Like things were a lot more simpler, and they were kind of, not only were they simpler, but I had done things like in the sense of like, again, like not referring to like what the future holds. It was just like right now, we need to do this tour and play these shows, and we want to put out this music, and we want to be part of this thing, this community, and we want to create this art. And so we just kind of did it for like then. And then now that there's a linear perspective of it, yeah, I mean, I still struggle with like, what the hell am I doing? And then also like why, and then occasionally like, how did I do this? You know, because it wasn't ever thought out at all. I don't think there was any point. The only things that I really would comprehend were like, oh, the industry's changing, and now like when Napster came out, I was just like, oh shit, now everything's free. This is kind of weird. And then you know, now with Spotify is another thing too, where it's like the most unethical source for people to get music, which is probably and arguably the biggest. But it's just like it's an entity that I don't think is favorable to artists, and yeah. So I'm constantly trying to like figure out what the right move is, and like the next position that I can pivot to for survival.
Little bit more on that for other people, students, younger people who are thinking about how they can explore DIY with all your years of experience. Is there any kind of like guidance, feedback you kind of put out there, things you wouldn't do again? I mean, you mentioned that now we have social media, right? So that kind of makes promoting a lot easier. But as far as starting your own label, getting records pressed, whatever it is, if you have any kind of things that you would say maybe to focus on or things to stay away from.
I think it's a obviously a relevant question, but for me, like I never had any help or like guidance. It was kind of just like, what am I gonna do, or what are we gonna do? You know, like me and the people that I was working with. And I think that like as much as I would like to say like do this or don't do that, I think that not only does the individual have to experience things themselves, but like I can't speak for someone else. I don't know why bands are wildly popular or why bands fail, and I don't know why it's so hard to get, you know, 4 or 5 human beings to work together in as one unit and like function in a healthy way. Or like I don't know what the relevance of art is. I don't even know what good art is, you know, because it's subjective. Like what you like might not be what I like, and vice versa. So like when someone says, well, what would you say to younger people? I mean, for one, I would say probably don't start a record label, because being, you know, in a band is one thing, but being in a band and like facilitating all of the logistical business side of it like sucks.
Yeah.
I'm also a publicist. And then like, yeah, I mean, I might as well be a social media marketer, and that stuff's too like life sucking. Like back in the day, it'd be like, well, we have to make flyers and we have to try to make really cool looking ones and go put them out at record stores or wherever, you know, that people conjugate. But like now it's just online and you kind of fart everything out there and like things get missed, you know, and like, while I'll say that the internet and has been like probably the best thing for art, it's given everybody access and instant access. It also has helped people just like fart out stuff that I think maybe they didn't put an appropriate amount of effort or sincerity into.
Yeah.
So, you know, it has its pros and cons, I suppose. But the information I'd offer to anybody else is just like, good luck. You know, I have no words at this point.
No, I get it. Especially the way things change so much, right? So that's definitely kind of relevant there. You kind of touched on a little bit there about the balancing of the business, the creative side, the business challenges. Going forward in your own personal career and what you're doing, do you see yourself slowly dropping off some of these tasks and like coming back to some core things? Or what do you see for what you would like to do over the next 10 years?
Well, I don't want to die.
Yeah.
And then I also like I'm seeing a shift in the way that humans are acknowledging the social and mental complications that come with like the world we live in. So there's like all of these things that I think are important. Into like taking this into a larger picture, like why do we create art? You know, I mean, I don't necessarily like play in bands for fun. Like I think I do it for inherently for survival, like for enjoyment, to create something with my friends or to make something that I feel is interesting or relevant or that I enjoy myself, but also like to communicate with people and to connect with people, and also to have a cathartic experience, hopefully with other people that they can appreciate. So like I think that those are things that I try to factor into like my daily life. And what the future holds is wild, because at times, you know, a good example is like how there's like this shift in importance on social media, and how there's like influencers and like what's popular and how many followers you have, or even in the musical standard where it's like how many streams is your band getting. That's gonna dictate like what kind of shows or tours you can get on. You know, at the end of the day, it's like what's good and what's bad is maybe irrelevant, or it's definitely subjective, because like it comes down to like elements of capitalism that I think that don't have any sort of connection to creativity at all. It's just what's profitable. And you know, with that being said, yeah, there's huge strides in like positive things for humanity, but there's also like just a lot of negligence. And I think that those are things that I'm trying to focus on, like what is relevant, and like what is something that's gonna like sustain itself. Because I'd rather be, you know, mildly popular or not popular at all, and do something with integrity and have context of like what is actually holding value. And I don't mean value in like a monetary sense, but value in a sense that like this is something that like at least is important to me and maybe my family of our community. But like I'd rather do that than like just be successful and have something that's kind of like a cheap commodity.
Yeah.
So Yeah, it sucks. It sucks being broke and poor and struggling. I do it. I'm doing it right now. But like at the same time, like I'm grateful for the things that I've accomplished and the people that I know and have worked with and my opportunities and all the things that I have aligned myself with. And those are the things that I'll continue to kind of push to be part of.
As far as bands or movements that are upcoming, do you see anything out there right now that's giving you hope about the continuation of kind of what you and your friends, have done? So, like, you have kind of a unique perspective where you've survived, right? Like a lot of bands that I went to high school with, and listened to, they burnt out, after one album, a couple years. And so I'm just kind of curious if there's things out there right now that you're like, oh yeah, this is definitely leading in the right place, or maybe you're kind of concerned that, like you mentioned, we need to put more effort into what we put out before, like, because it's so easy to put out your first draft as opposed to back in the past when we had to kind of sit and do multiple drafts, go on tour a little bit, kind of refine things, right? And then you actually got to press an album. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I think that probably one of the most relevant shifts that I've seen in things is like, so I would consider whatever punk subculture, whatever you want to call this, a microcosm of the bigger world. Like, yes, it's supposed to be progressive and have this sort of like push towards, I don't know, like just social change or whatever. But at the same time, we do have our own internal issues. One thing I've noticed in like punk and hardcore through me, I mean, the first time I first started going to shows, I was 10 years old, and I remember like being 11 or 12 and seeing the Cramps and like kind of tripping out on like seeing women playing the band and stuff, and seeing like this sort of like non-binary weird, like, I don't even know what you want to call, like Lux Interiors like vibe, and like just a lot of like things that were like precursor to what we're seeing now. So like with like trans youth and people of color, and I think also in just like blurring gender lines, gender stereotypes are things that I'm seeing in like the music and the punk community, and also in a bigger picture as well. I think that those are very important shifts, and I think that they are long overdue. And I've seen those shifts happen in like different points, and a lot of times it's like a good example is this band Converge, who's very popular, and they're sort of like from the same era that I came up in hardcore, and they are like pretty aggressive, and they're dudes, and their audience typically was that as well, aggressive. They're not aggressively as like people, but the music is aggressive, and they're just dudes and moshing. And a few years ago, I saw them at a show in Texas, this festival, and I was blown away by the amount of women that were in the crowd, all the trans people that were there, and there was a noticeable, obvious shift that punk and hardcore was changing for the better. And I think that's very important. And I think that like there's probably lulls in it, like where people are losing the sort of intensity of being like political or socially conscious, or aiming for change, or like working with like different communities or charities. And I think that we're back at this point. Obviously, the larger politics of the world influence art, and I think that like we're seeing that right now. Like a lot of the stuff happening with the genocide in Gaza, and stuff with like ICE, and the deportations that we're seeing now that are like visible. I think that those are things that are all playing into the subcultures, and I think that I think that it's a community that's taking. I mean, it's never enough, but I think it's the community that's taking a lead and like and a stance, and like shifting the narrative to be like in a more positive direction.
Nice. Yeah. No, I can see that. Going back to kind of something you touched on a little bit. When you and I first met, you were doing a release party.
Yes.
What was the name of that restaurant? Do you remember?
Kindred. Yeah.
Kindred?
Yeah.
That was really... I'd never been to a release that had been kind of so like DIY in that aspect, where it was like you could roll in, and I hadn't been to that restaurant before.
Mm-hmm.
am I right? Like it's a vegetarian or vegan restaurant, and they only play heavy metal kind of music in the background. Yeah. No, it was a really fun experience, and then we got chatting a little bit. So, what caught my attention was that you had pressed records there, and that was the product that you were kind of like having available for people to pick up. And so we kind of touched on streaming platforms a little bit, whether it is for the ethical reasons that we disagree with, Spotify and the other companies, how they're using, the funds that we've given them not paying bands and individuals, a fair wage. From your perspective as both a musician and a label owner, why is physical media like vinyl, or whether it's cassettes or whatever it is, so perfectly suited for this moment for people to kind of go back to own it? We have a whole generation of people that grew up where they've never owned a CD, they've never owned a cassette or a vinyl, right? Everything was either iTunes or streaming to some degree. And so why do you think that as people start canceling their subscriptions, that physical media is absolutely the way to kind of go back to, even if it's a little bulky, right? But I'd just like to hear some of your thoughts on why you chose to go down that road. I mean, easily marketing, right? Like there's something to push, but other than that, for the music quality itself and the listening experience, I'd just like to hear what you think, both as a musician and a producer, about physical media.
Well, I grew up obviously with it, so it has, and I think nostalgia is kind of stupid for the most part, but it does have a nostalgic element to it. But I think with like physical media, specifically vinyl, there's the packaging, the artwork, and all of that stuff has information in it. So yes, there's the music, there's the sounds, but there's also the visuals, and there's an aesthetic that goes with it. It helps aid in the feeling that like I think that you're supposed to achieve with music. And I think that's an interesting thing. But like, and I don't want to derail this question, but I do want to say that like the concept of what I thought punk is, I think that Kindred is also punk, because I mean the owner Corey comes from punk and hardcore, and it has a lot of like elements that are traced or like adjacent to punk, and that's why he was like, oh, let's have this record release thing here. Also, they're one of our sponsors of our podcast, but also another sponsor of our podcast is Smashed Plastic, who pressed this record, and they're from Chicago. They're also like such an ethical, morally sound record pressing plant, and someone that we also want to align ourselves with, someone who I think is very punk as well. And so I think that it creates an even larger picture of what the whole thing is. I mean, yeah, it's a podcast and we're talking to our friends, and a lot of times it's musicians, but a lot of times it's not musicians. I mean, we've had the San Diego Black Panther Party on it. We've had yoga instructors on it. We've had authors on it. Like it's all over the spectrum of like what I think, and I wouldn't even say art is. I think it's just sort of like a community standard or a community building entity. And so I think that those are all important things. But like as far as like how I want to experience music, I personally like to sit down with a record and listen to it and look at the art and experience that music in that way. That's how I like to achieve it, other than just like scrolling or have an algorithm be like, oh, hear this next. Because I really don't want an algorithm telling me, you like this, well, you're gonna like these. And even like I'll reference like the Locust. I'll see what are the, like when Spotify became a thing, I remember I was like, this is crazy, this is so wild, there's an algorithm suggesting the other artist, and I was like offended that like 80% of the other artists that it was selecting. I was like, this is garbage. Why is this happening? And I don't think I want AI telling me what my playlist should consist of. I want it to be special for myself, and like not only do I want to find it myself, but I just don't want there to be like metadata telling me this is what I should be doing. I think it just changed the narrative. It changes the overall experience of everything. So yeah, I think that physical media, and also if you want to support a band, like you can listen to it on Spotify or you can stream it on Bandcamp or whatever, but let's face it, the band or the artists are getting paid very little. Where if you buy a record or whatever other sort of like merchandise commodity that they have, you are inherently helping them pay their rent, pay the gas when they go on tour, whatever it is, buy their new equipment that they need, whatever it is. So, yeah.
Got it. By the way, if you haven't been to Kindred, I highly recommend the Charred Remains.
That was so good. So good. Also, Charred Remains is a band reference.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Awesome, super weird band called Charred Remains.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that's like a deep cut too. Like when you go there and you're like, oh, these menu items are named after bands or songs. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cool.
No, I loved how playful it was, but in a way that wasn't serious at all. Like it really kind of like scratched a really good itch for me that night, just like showing up.
Cool,
So
yeah.
Okay, so if listeners want to dig deeper into what you're doing, if they want to buy your records, if they want to support your label, where are you? What are you doing? How can they find more out?
Well, the label that I started is called 31G. It's spelled out THREEONEG, and it kind of is a bigger umbrella for a lot of the bands I'm in, as well as the Cult and Culture podcast. So if you kind of start at 31G, you should be able to navigate all the things. Same with like some of the books that I published, some of my friends' books that I published. Just different things. I mean, it all hopefully kind of helps. You'll find music, literature. You'll find political activists. You'll find ethical shirt printing. You'll find all of the things hopefully under even like again like the podcast guests who stretch beyond people that are on 31G or friends that are musicians. It'll stretch into like other facets of the world, I guess. So yeah, 31G would be the starting point, I suppose.
Awesome. What about I noticed Planet B on a lot of stuff.
So Planet B is a band that my bandmate Luke Henshaw and I started, and when I did Cult and Culture originally, it was I would go on tour and I would just bring a recorder and ask someone like some stuff for like 10 minutes, and it would typically be like music adjacent, but I didn't want to ask the obvious questions. And I think it was like the 11th episode or volume, I had Luke Henshaw on it, and he was like, "Oh, you should just do this as a podcast at his studio." And I was like, "Oh, totally, I should." And so we became Cult and Culture podcast from there, and so it was Planet B presents Cult and Culture podcast. And again, like when at that point we weren't really, Planet B was more of like a multimedia thing where like even before the podcast we had made music, and then we would kind of do like these DJ nights and we would host shows, but we wouldn't play. And then we started becoming a band, and then now, yeah, I mean Planet B is a band that has a podcast, and then it probably stops there. I think.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, Justin, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
It's been kind of a wild ride. I'm glad that we were finally able to have this conversation.
Yeah.
We started this probably 6 months ago, trying to like make this wrap up. So for all the listeners, explore music, go out, support the communities that are building culture out there. We'll see you next time. Stay low.
Also, I want to say what's up to KCR. Like, it's pretty legendary for San Diego, and I think that this is an important. College radio is an important aspect that ties into all of the other things that we've been talking about. So yes.
Cool.
Yeah. Thanks.
Go KCR. All right. Have a great one.